Welcome to another edition of Eye on Matteson. I'm your host, Laverne Murphy, and Village President Sheila Chalmers-Curran is the executive producer of this show. On this edition of Eye on Matteson, information will be shared about appealing your property taxes. So if you feel your property taxes have been overassessed, causing a high property tax bill, you can file an appeal with the Rich Township Assessor's Office. And here to talk about appealing your property taxes is our special guest, Sam Brown, the Rich Township Assessor. Prior to becoming the assessor for Rich Township, Sam was the property tax appeals analyst for 11 years at the Cook County Board of Review. Sam has helped many residents throughout Cook County receive fair and equitable property tax through the appeal process. And Sam is no stranger to the Village of Matteson as the former Board of Trustee. So join me in welcoming Sam Brown. Sam, thank you so much for joining Eye on Matteson.
Thank you for having me, Laverne.
Yes, well, you know, we have a wealth of information to share, especially about property taxes.
It's a big topic.
All the time. And so you hear about the Board of Review, and then you hear about the assessor. What is the difference between the two?
Right. So the assessor actually establishes the value of your home. And in doing so, creates the basis upon which your tax bill is calculated. So he comes up with an estimate of the market value of your house, and then he multiplies that by 10% because that's the assessment rate. And that number, if it's your house's market value 100,000, 10% would be 10,000. 10,000 would be your assessed value. And that's the value upon which your bill will be calculated off of. Okay.
Okay. And then the Board of Review, what role do they play?
The Board of Review plays what is referred to as a quasi-judicial relationship, in that they're basically like an overseer. They strictly involve themselves with appeals, they don't involve themselves with establishing market value. So when you go to the Board of Review, what you're asking them is to review what the assessor did, because I don't think it's fair. And that's what they do. They review it, and if they think it's fair, they won't change it. But if they don't think it's fair, based on the evidence that you submit, then they will reduce it appropriately.
Okay. And so a lot of people, you know, with Cook County property taxes, when we speak of it, they cringe because they know sometimes it could be, you know, a heavy burden for some homeowners. And so when we talk about the assessment, we're not necessarily talking about the overall tax bill itself when you're appealing. You're just appealing your actual assessed value.
That is correct.
Right?
Right. Because, and I'm glad you bring that up, because a lot of people use the term, I want to appeal my taxes. And while the end result, of course, is hopefully a lower tax bill going forward, what you're actually appealing is the value that the assessor placed on it. Now, here's the ironic part about that. It's kind of counterintuitive, right? None of us want to go around bragging that our property value is low.
Right.
But that's exactly what you have to do when you go to appeal your property tax assessment, is to say it's low, because it's too high. Now, in real life, it can never be too high, but for assessor practices, yes, it can be too high.
Yes. And so when they're looking at the assessment and not the overall tax bill, what's everything that's making up your tax bill?
Okay, so once you get to the assessed value, which is 10% of what he says the market value is, then you have to deal with the state multiplier, all right? And beyond the state multiplier is the local tax rate, which is Mattison's tax rate, 18 point something or whatever. But a lot of people are confused about the purpose of the equalizer factor. What it does is, in the state of Illinois, our law is that all counties should be assessed at a median level of 33.33%. Well, in Cook County, we have a couple of different assessment levels. Residential is 10%. And so what the multiplier does is it multiplies your rate to get it close to as 3.33% as possible. So to put it in simple terms, if you're at 10% assessed level and you multiply it by 3, the multiplier 3, then you're pretty much close to where they want you to be on average. So that's what the multiplier, that's the purpose of the multiplier, is to bring everybody in line at 33.33%.
Okay. And so aside from the obvious of your property tax bill being high, what are some of the reasons to appeal? What do they look for?
Well, one of the reasons you want to appeal is that you feel that your market value is higher than what it should be. Now, over the years that I've been doing this work, I've had many people come to me and say, I wish I could sell my house for what the price the assessor says it's worth.
Right.
Because they can't, for the most part. So, you know, you have a point when you say my assessed value is too high.
Exactly.
And also there's the correlation between a lower assessed value and a lower property tax bill. And so that's how they make that connection.
Okay. And so then how often are home values assessed or reassessed?
Right. So home values are reassessed every 3 years. And with 2020 coming up, 2020 is going to be a reassessment year. I believe the assessments changes will come out around September of 2020, which will be in time for you to appeal that new assessment if you feel you should do that. Yeah.
Okay. And so with them reassessing every 3 years, the assessed value remains the same, but yet residents will see maybe on an annual basis that the property taxes may fluctuate.
That's true.
So what causes that fluctuation?
Okay, so and again, what sometimes people kind of miss a little bit on is that it's your local tax rate that determines what your bill is going to be. And so if the local tax rate is 17.5 this year, and all things stay the same, but budgets get submitted and budgets kind of tend to increase a little bit, they find that it's got to be 18.5 next year, then yeah, it's likely that your tax bill will go up a little bit, despite the fact that your assessed level is the same.
Right. And then when we talk about the taxing bodies, it's more than just the local municipality.
Correct.
There are numerous other taxing bodies that all collectively play a role in this.
Yes, you've got, well, you've got the Village of Matteson, of course. You've got Rich Township, where I work. You've got the Cook County Mosquito Abatement District. You've got the Matteson Library Board, I believe. And I think there might be one other one. Not to mention the school district.
That's the biggest one.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, 159, 227, and the Prairie State school district. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So those are big chunks in your tax bill.
Right. So that causes the fluctuation of the tax bill when they are levying different taxes.
Exactly. From year to year, everybody's budget, no doubt, changes from year to year. If for structural reasons, if nothing else, stuff just goes up, even if you don't do anything.
Right.
You know.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, walk me through the process. If I'm coming into Rich Township and wanting to appeal my property taxes, what are some of the things I need to bring? What are just kind of walk us through what that process looks like.
Okay. So the most simplest thing is to come into the office. Bring your tax bill with you. You don't necessarily have to, because we could probably look it up on the computer, but I would say bring it. You never know, your computer may be down or anything, or we might not be able to access that particular program. And so, we'll look at that. And the simplest thing to do is to go into our database and look for comparable homes similar to yours and see where they're valued at on what we call a per square foot cost basis, all right? And so if all the homes in your block are, and all that is the value, your assessment has two components, the house and the land. So we take the house value divided by the square footage of the house. It might be $10 a square foot. So if all the houses on your block are at $10 a square foot, except you, and you're like $15 a square foot, that's what we refer to as lack of uniformity. And so what we want to do is make you uniform with the others and bring you down to the $10 per square foot level. And when you do the math, it'll generally resort in a lower tax bill, notwithstanding fluctuations in the local tax rate.
Wow, how sometimes can there be such a huge discrepancy among a homeowner?
That is really kind of difficult to say. A lot of people don't appeal their property taxes.
Right.
And so that would have
Okay.
the effect of and then when you combine that with reassessments, it can result in discrepancies.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Okay. So what is the success rate typically when individuals appeal?
Well, in my experience with the Board of Review, close to 70% of people that applied for a reduction in their assessed value got a reduction. Now, those reductions could range from relatively small to significant, depending on the evidence that was produced.
Right.
Now, with the assessor, it's probably a little bit different. They do grant reductions, but generally not to the same level as the Board of Review would. But you can kind of understand it because the assessor is the one who developed the number in the first place. And so I would imagine his feeling is, we went through this process to develop this number and it was very thorough, and so you're going to have some super compelling evidence to make us change it.
Right.
Whereas the Board of Review, they look at the numbers, they look at your comparable, your evidence, and they say, okay, yeah, I can see where a reduction is warranted here. And they'll grant that.
Okay. So that 30% that's left that may not necessarily get it through the assessor, then they can transform and go higher to the Board of Review.
Okay, yeah. So the people that maybe not end up with one, it could mean that, the hard part to understand is it could be that it's not warranted.
No one wants to come
Nobody
to that
wanna hear that
reality.
part.
No, not at all.
It could be that it's not warranted. It could be that the amount of reduction that was available was so insignificant that the analysts looking at it said, leave it the same. Because from a practical standpoint, it wouldn't have made much difference. And it could be because the evidence submitted was not appropriate for that particular case, But you do have an option. There's the next step is the Property Tax Appeal Board over the Board of Review. That involves going to court and generally getting a lawyer involved.
Wow.
But people do it, particularly people with high value homes. Because you're really talking about a lot of dollars at stake.
Right. Absolutely. And so when you appeal your property taxes, when can a homeowner see the reflection on their property tax bill?
Right. So typically, when you do an appeal and it's successful, then the impact of that appeal will be seen on your second installment tax bill, which is the one that comes out in July 1st. Okay. And that'll show your reduced assessed level and hopefully a lower tax bill.
Okay. Okay. And so when is the open season for residents to appeal their taxes?
Right. Okay, so we had the assessor appeal period in September, between September and October. We are waiting now for the Board of Review to let us know when that's going to be open. We're thinking it's going to be between December and January. Unfortunately, they can't tell us for sure because we'd like to do a little bit more advanced preparation to be ready for it. But we'll have to wait and see. So I talk to the Board of Review once a week. Any indication yet? We don't know yet. But between December and January will be the period to appeal. And you can appeal. You can come to our office and do it. You can appeal online with the Board of Review. You can go to one of the many outreach sessions that the Board of Review holds around the area to do that. So it's really easy, relatively speaking, to get your appeal done.
Okay, so residents need to get ready because it's upon us.
It is coming right up. Yeah.
Right, and it's not an open season. There are closing dates, so a resident has only a limited time.
It's going to be 1 month.
Okay.
1 month. Now, what people can do in preparation for that, and what the Board of Review had implemented several years ago, is by having these outreaches around a community, they give you the ability to pre-file. And so many people have filed for their appeals back in the summer at an outreach. They have them right when the tax bills come out because that's when the anger level is the highest and you get the greatest response to notices about an outreach period. As you get closer and closer to the actual appeal period, you get less and less unless people know that it's coming up. So we've gotten a lot more appeals done since they started having these outreach events right after the tax bills come out, so that we can get the maximum amount of people to appeal.
Okay, good, good. And so, aside from your regular exemptions, your senior exemptions and your home ownership, are there any other exemptions people can take advantage of?
Well, yeah, there's a disabled exemption. There is a veterans exemption. In fact, there's a veterans exemption that I believe says if you're over 70% or more disabled, you don't pay any property taxes.
Wow.
Yeah. So now, in order to get more specifics on these exemptions, because it's actually just a tad bit complicated, and so my deputy assessors are very adept at that. They have in-depth knowledge of the appeal of the exemption process. My strong suit is the appeal process and strategizing for actual appeals. So we have a good balance in the office.
Okay, good. Well, Sam, you've shared so much information, and so we greatly appreciate you coming on Eye on Matteson and, letting individuals know how they can appeal their property taxes, because the information needs to be told.
Yeah, people need to be able to do that. Unfortunately, now this is my opinion, we have a flawed property tax system. If it were what it was supposed to be, then all these appeals wouldn't probably be so necessary. But there's a whole topic on school funding, economic development that we can talk to about another time and talk about why the system is not helpful to most of us today.
Right.
In the absence of that, though, people can call our office 748-6722. Area code 708, and ask for the assessors department, and one of our assessor people will be happy to answer questions that they have.
Great. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on Eye on Matteson. I truly appreciate all the information that you've shared.
Pleasure's mine. Glad to be here.
All right, great. Well, thank you again, Sam, for joining Eye on Matteson, and thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. I'm your host, Laverne Murphy, and our village president, Sheila Chalmers-Curran, is the executive producer of this show. So until next time, stay tuned, stay informed, get involved, and make sure you are counted in the 2020 census. So thank you for joining Eye on Matteson.